You hear people all the time, and I know you coach men who've been through some dark things all the time. When I'm coaching people, I thrive in chaos. Frank, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Why would you want to thrive in chaos? Why would you not want to thrive in joy and peace and love and happiness, compassion, empathy, grace, hope? Why would you want to thrive in chaos? But think about this. If that is your nomenclature for what it means to exist, then the idea of removing yourself from chaos is so foundationally and fundamentally unknown that it's actually terrifying. You see this all the time. Why do people go back to toxic relationships? Why do people go back to jobs where they're treated like crap? Why do people stay in massive amounts of debt? Because I thrive in chaos.
Michael, my brother, welcome to the Superhuman Life.
Dude, it is an absolute pleasure. I think it's hilarious how the universe has made this an incredibly difficult and jaunting journey to get to this moment. But brother, I'm excited to be here with you.
And what I've noticed, man, is sometimes when you got to jump through those hoops to make something happen, that's when the real magic comes out. So I think that might be a sign that we might spark something here today between the two of us, because I think there's a lot of parallels, both in our journeys and our stories. I think we see a lot of things very similar. I think with your work being really focused on the trauma, and there being elements of that in the work that I do with the men that I help and serve. I'm really looking forward to what we're going to be diving into. I've had a chance to, I haven't read the entire book because I just got it last week, but I've really been spending a lot of time going through it. And, I love how you've written it with the, little short chapters. It's almost kind of like a daily guide. Is that kind of was your thought process, something to kind of serve as like not a devotional type of thing, but something where you can kind of punctuate 10, 15 minutes of work and you kind of build it day after day after day? Was that kind of your thought process in putting it together?
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's a great question. When I sat down to write the first book, Think Unbroken, it was really about, can I create the framework and the baseline, right? A 101 entry level course into this. Because Frank, man, if I would have written the book initially that I had begun to write, it would be freaking 1,500 pages long. Right. I'm not even joking. And I had to cull this and re-edit and re-edit and re-edit and re-edit. And ultimately, even at 250 or how many pages it is, I'm still like, man, that's still too long. Right. And so I thought to myself, well, the biggest thing is, can I make it clear, concise, easy, structured, and in a way that people can take in what they need, while simultaneously recognizing that if you read this book only one time, it's not going to help you. Right. This is a book that you need to come back to again and again and again and again, because, the thing that that really dawned on me, right, especially as I was crafting it, outlining it, storyboarding it, I thought to myself, I can't possibly give people 35, 36 years of information and education, a decade of deep education in a book that they'll read one time and expect their life to be different. And I think one of the big mistakes that we often make is that we will be like, oh, I read that book checklist. And it's like, yeah, you read it, but did you comprehend it? And that's one of the things that I've tried to do with the course of my life over the last couple of years is, personally, dude, I'm reading the same 7 to 9 books. Right. Whereas before I was like, dude, I read 62 books this year. I've read like 300 in my life. And then I was like, wait a second, but I don't remember any of them.
Yeah.
So why don't I just reread the things that help me when they actually really speak and call to me? And that's what I hope that this book does for people.
Yeah, what I love too is you have, I think you call them the blank pages, so like right after each chapter, it's like, okay, read the information. And there's a few great books out there that give you these action steps, but it's like, read the information, now go apply it. And here's actually where you should just document it right here in the book. So as you're going through it, that second and third time, it's like your notes from the first time are sitting right there in front of you. So it's like, you get to see the progression and evolution of your own self over the series of years, I would assume, if you're reading it multiple times.
Yeah. And the thing that's interesting about that too is that I would argue it's very difficult. The reason that I say that is because when you sit down and you take a pen to paper, resonating and reflecting on the truth of where you're at in this life right now today, that is a reflection in the mirror. And that's a really, really hard thing for people to do. But I put it in there because I always felt like whenever I would read a book that was just like unbelievably captivating, I would grab my journal and I would take notes as I go. I still do that to this day. Actually, I was doing it this morning. And I wanted people to have this place where they could put their thoughts and their mind and their truth and have it be a reference point and not be afraid of their reality. And some of those questions at the end of those chapters are really difficult, right? You have to sit there. I wanted it to push people in a powerful way that would make them contemplate reality. And what I mean by that is we live in the notion based on, especially if you grew up in childhood trauma and abuse, that you are supposed to be a certain person and you are stripped of the ability to be anything else, right? Effectively, I always think that childhood trauma and abuse is, it's really the theft of identity that pulls from us more than anything. And so I wanted people to be able to get closer to themselves. And that's why I did that, because I always just felt like it's missing in great books. Like, can I reflect on this for 30 seconds? No, go to the next thing. It's like, wait a second.
Yeah, and I really think what we're getting to. I really feel like that is a big thesis of the entire book. I mean, you have that opening quote right at, I think it's the first or second chapter, with the house being built on top of the volcano will crumble under its eruption. And it's like so many of us navigate and walk out and never look at healing, processing, exploring, navigating, raising our self-awareness about what we've gone through. So I think there's kind of a couple things that we can kind of explore here. Number one, why do you think that is the case? Like, why do you think so many people avoid, the processing or the analysis, the analysis of their past or of their trauma? And what happens to an individual when they don't process and heal from their childhood trauma?
Yeah, well, two very, very important questions, right? And the first, I'll answer them one at a time. The very reason that I believe that people struggle so greatly to move through this stage of healing is because they've never been allotted the space to understand that they are actually allowed to take care of themselves, that they are actually allowed to love themselves, that they are actually allowed to be the person that they did not get in their childhood, in their youth, in their developmental years, right? If think about this, you hear people all the time, and I know you coach men who've been through some dark things, right? You hear this all the time, and I hear all the time when I'm coaching people, I thrive in chaos. Frank, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Why would you want to thrive in chaos? Why would you not want to thrive in joy and peace and love and happiness, compassion, empathy, grace, hope? Why would you want to thrive in chaos? But think about this, right? If that is your nomenclature for what it means to exist, then the idea of removing yourself from chaos is so foundationally and fundamentally unknown that it's actually terrifying. And so people, you see this all the time. Why do people go back to toxic relationships? Why do people go back to jobs where they're treated like crap? Why do people stay in massive amounts of debt? Because I thrive in chaos. Everything that you've experienced up to this point, all these learnings, all this education, all of the space in which you have developed in, not thrived, you've developed in pain, not in joy, not in love, not in happiness. So automatically you have, because of narratives that have been groomed and enmeshed and ingrained into you outside of your own choice and proclivity, you believe that you are not worthy of having what's on the other side. So why go through healing? Why bother? I hear this all the time. Yeah, well, it'll work for other people. It's not going to work for me. No, of course, it's definitely not going to work for you. You know why? You already predetermined it wasn't because of the words that you used. The second you say this is not going to work for me, you have already written the check. You made that decision. And what happens is you have to be willing, now moving into the other side of the question, you have to be willing to move into this place where you allot yourself the space to have grace for the fact that you have no freaking idea what you're doing, that you're going to screw up a whole lot before things get better, and that you're going to need help in the process. And so many times people will be like, well, why would I ever want to have somebody help me? I can figure this out on my own. Ultimate fixed mindset, because you're going to struggle in ways that you don't have to when you choose to go down this path alone. I think about this when I'm coaching people all the time. I tell them something very simple. I don't ever try to convince anybody to step into changing their life. Not my role. I'm just simply here to guide you. And I asked them, I say, if you were walking down a tunnel and it's pitch black, would you choose to walk down that tunnel by yourself? Or would you be willing to extend your hand out to the person who just happens to be a couple steps in front of you, who've walked down that tunnel before, and they happen to have a flashlight? And that's the thing. People have to have the willingness to have support, to recognize that they matter, that they have value, that they can have other people contribute to their success, and that most importantly, no one has ever done anything great on their own. Name them. They don't exist. And we sit here and we're like, man, I'm going to change my life. Okay, how? I'm just going to try stuff. Okay, cool. But what happens when most people try stuff, Frank? What happens? The second that either it gets hard or they make a mistake, they bail because they're used to failure. Dude, I'm going to tell you right now, and people don't want to hear this, and it's uncomfortable, but it's just the truth. People are far, far more and exceedingly more scared of success than they are failure. Bro, we fail all the time. We are used to it, i.e., I thrive in chaos. Well, what happened if you had a great relationship? If you took care of your body and your health, if you took care of your mind, if you loved yourself unconditionally when you looked in the mirror, when you had a community and support group of peers who actually gave a shit about you, what would that be? What would it be like, Frank, if you stood in front of your mom or your stepdad or your grandmother and say, these are my boundaries, do not cross them because I love myself enough to tell you don't? And people have to be willing to face that fear because it's the unknown. And think about this, right? You hear this all the time, especially in personal development. What is the brain's purpose? Survival. That's it. That's purpose one. However, what people forget is that purpose number two is that the brain is a meaning-making machine. So it is always looking for an understanding of the stimulus of the environment that we're in. And if survival and meaning-making go hand in hand, then the thing that you have to understand is when you are growing up in your developmental years, if the brain is assessing the things that happen to you in your life as dangerous or unsafe, and those things happen to be you being you, this is where it gets really crazy. Imagine for a second, you grow up in a traumatic household and the most dangerous thing that you can do is be yourself. Well, now the brain goes, wait a second. Why the hell would I want to be me? Every time I'm me, I'm in danger. Well, my service is survival. I better not be me anymore. And you start to bend, you start to placate, you start to chameleon, and you start to be everything everyone else needs you to be, so you're safe. And Frank, the worst part about that, man, is that serves you for a period of time. Because when you're 8, 12, 17 years old, guess what? You're safe. That was me. Like it didn't matter what it was. Anything that I had to do to not be me, to keep myself safe, I would do. And then guess what? You're 22, 36, 74 years old. You have no idea who you are. You don't know how to say yes. You don't know how to say no, and you suffer. Understanding causation and correlation is everything in this journey. There is a rhyme and reason to the purpose and the structure of why it is that you are the way that you are today. And to ignore that is to your own detriment.
How much of this thriving in chaos and these people that, subscribe to, I don't want to call it a belief, but we'll voice this out. They've they bought into that lie, right? That's the path to success for them is living in chaos. How much of it is an avoidance of maybe taking responsibility? And the reason why I asked that, so we had 5 or 6 episodes back, we had Annie Yatch. Annie Yatch is a chief transformation officer for Navy SEAL team leaders, expert in behavioral change. So what Navy SEAL team leader does is they help companies grow and scale by healing the childhood trauma of the CEO and founder. So just like yourself, she's an expert in trauma. Her business partner is one of the most elite Navy SEALs of all time. And the way that they phrase trauma is it's the perceived loss of control of a situation. So when we're thriving in chaos, or if we have moments of childhood trauma that are still living in us, that's that perceived loss of control, which kind of places us in a victim seat, right? It's like we don't have control of the situation. We're now the victim. So the outcome is outside of our responsibility. So this thriving in chaos, I'm almost hearing it and seeing it as like it's a way for somebody to say that they're going to succeed in this chaos, but if the outcome isn't what they were aiming for, if the outcome wasn't success, well, the chaos was the reason for that, right? So what role or what element here is just the lack of taking personal responsibility. And if we know that, how does somebody begin to step into taking ownership and responsibility for their life?
Yeah. And it's A, I will agree with everything that you just said. B, I will also add a parallel to that. Again, coming back to this idea that I believe to be true, that trauma is actually the theft of identity. And so if you spend your whole life not knowing who you are and you believe that who you are is what everybody else has told you that you are supposed to be, then that will be your native tongue, right?
Yeah.
It won't be different. And so getting into that place about responsibility is more so than just responsibility, right? Responsibility is easy, right? Taking accountability for the things that happen in your life, that's simple, right? You just simply stand in the truth and you go, this is my fault. But wait a second, think about this. I'm going to bring this back again. What happens when you go through your developmental years and when you make mistakes, you get your head slammed into a wall? What happens when you're wrong on a test and you get starved? What happens when somebody at school picks on you and you come home with a bloody shirt and your parents lock you in a closet? Now you don't know how to be responsibility because you've associated responsibility with pain and suffering. And what you have to be able to do is come to this truth that all of the things, even up till this moment, I'll give you a get out of jail free card. All of the things in your life leading up to this moment, you are not culpable for. It is not your responsibility that those bad things happen to you. Dude, when I was 4 years old, my mother cut off my right index finger. My stepfather would beat the crap out of me, hospitalize me. My grandmother was racist, and I'm biracial, black and white. I was homeless. I became a drug addict at 12 years old, an alcoholic at 13. I got kicked out of school. I don't have a high school diploma or a college degree. By the time I was 25, I was 350 pounds, smoking 2 packs a day, drinking myself to sleep. The list goes on and on and on. Well, think about this for a second. All I ever did, Frank, was exactly what everybody told me I was going to do. You're not good enough. You're not strong enough. You're not capable enough. You're a loser. You're a piece of shit. You're fat. You're stupid. Nobody loves you. Well, I guess that's how my life is. I'm going to live into that truth. And then what happened is I had this radical awakening. And I realized it's not my fault that those bad things happen to me. Like, dude, I look at this finger every day. I can't make it go away. 5 surgeries, multiple skin grafts, missing half the fingernail, can't feel it. I see it every day. I can't run from the truth. And what we try to do as trauma survivors, because we're dissociated, meaning our brain is disconnected from our body, we dissociate as a survival mechanism. It keeps us safe to pretend it's not there. And so simply saying take responsibility, I think is really, really difficult because of the associations that we have with responsibility. What you have to understand is that in order to create this change, you must come to the same conclusion that I and millions of other people have come to, and that is that it's not your fault. But everything from this moment is on you. And that's where responsibility comes into play. And I'll tell you this, man, I go look at my life. I had this rock bottom moment where I had the worst night of my life. And the next day I'm looking at my life and I'm thinking to myself, how did I get here? 350, smoking 2 packs, drinking myself to sleep, laying in bed at 11 o'clock in the morning, eating chocolate cake and watching the CrossFit games. Like, bro, only way my life would get worse is if I had killed somebody.
Are you yelling at him too? Like you're slow, move faster. Like
yeah, that probably was happening, right? Fucking lazy people. But what happened, man, is I made this decision. I got up and I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror, and I remembered being 8 years old, and the water company had come and turned our water off. Now, dude, they were always turning off our water, our heat, our electricity. We were getting evicted. I lived with over 30 different families between 8 to 12 years old. So I was used to this. But this one particular day, I take this little blue bucket, I walk across the street to our neighbor's house, I turn on the spigot on the side of their house, and for the first time, I still water. And I'm like, when I'm a grown up, this is not going to be my life, right? And it wasn't in a lot of ways, but it was because I was still that hurt, lost little boy. And as I'm looking in the mirror, having this memory of being 8 years old all the way back then, I knew a massive truth that I had been avoiding. This is where responsibility comes into play, man. I was not keeping the promise that I made to myself that my life would be different. And as I looked in the mirror, I asked myself, what are you willing to do to have the life that you want to have? And the answer was no excuses, just results. And all that meant was I was no longer going to live the life that everybody else told me. I wasn't going to placate or bend or pretend to be anyone else. I wasn't going to be the victim anymore. And most importantly, I was going to get the hell out of my own way. And that's where that shift comes into play. Because if you want to play the victim, by all rights, you can. I will never take that from anyone, dude. Never. Because life is hard and sometimes it sucks really, really, really bad, right? I get it. I've been there. I will raise my hand and walk beside you. But you have to understand, if you want a different life, you have to take a different course of action. And to take that different course of action, you must take radical acceptance, acknowledgement, and responsibility that everything from this moment forward is on you.
What do you think it was about that day specifically? You know, like, because I know that there's another part of your story as well. You know, so you gave us here, you know, the 350, you know, the 2 packs a day, but I know you were succeeding in your career. You were having a level of success financially. But I also know that I've heard you talk about, like, your 5 childhood friends have been murdered and are no longer with us. So I'm curious if there's anything specifically about that moment, or if it was just the accumulation of decades kind of all sitting there and now it's looking back at you in the mirror.
Yeah, there's a beautiful quote in Stoicism that I often come to. It says a coward dies 1,000 deaths, and a man of courage dies one. And over the course of that time, like, man, I was just dying a death every single day,
Mm.
not living my truth, not being who I am. And I was successful very young. I mean, I had made a declaration to myself at 18 after not graduating high school that I'd make 100 grand a year legally. And and that was because I have family in prison for life. I'd been in handcuffs more times than I can count. And my 3 childhood best friends got murdered, man, murdered over drugs. And I was like, nope, do something different. And I landed a job with a Fortune 10 company and started making 100 grand a year when I was freaking 20 years old. But that just created excess in my life. It gave me the ability to screw up even more because I could do it freely, right? It wasn't a big deal for me to go chaos, right? Looking at my life at 26 years old, you know, one of my brothers was like, don't ever talk to me. You're not my brother anymore. My friends were just so non-supportive in so many ways. I mean, I was dating like 37 women at once, like putting myself in these massively dark and precarious situations, drinking all day long. Dude, I'd be like, go on my lunch break with it was part of society too, right? We go have lunch beers and then we go out and we drink all night and then we get a limo to the club and then we go drink all night and then we just wake up on Sunday after 3-day benders, right? And it was just life. And in that moment, what it was is, dude, I just realized I just always quit on myself. We do this so often. We quit, we give up, we say screw it, doesn't matter, what's the point? You know, and when I was 14 years old, I downed an entire bottle of Advil. I was like, game over. I'm done. I'm out. I don't want this anymore. I'm in high school. I'm a freshman in high school trying to kill myself. At 26, I put a gun in my mouth. I was done. Man, look, when people take their lives, like, bro, I get it. I get it because it doesn't feel like you can come back. But man, I promise you can. I've seen it in my life. I've seen it in lives of other people who are close to me. I've seen it in my clients' lives. You can, but you have to have something that you're moving towards. There's got to be a reason, right? When you're just nonchalantly living life, which is what I was. Like, dude, think about this. You hear this all the time, Frank. Money does not bring you happiness. Bro, I wasted $1 million on drugs and girls and cars and clothes. Bro, money does not make you happy. I thought it did. To go from homeless to that, man, I was like, I'm on top of the world. But wait a second, really? Because I'm pretty sure that my friends hate me and my girlfriend thinks I'm a piece of shit and I'm morbidly obese and I'm dying. That money really, really does not matter. What does matter is you get this clarity about, like, who do I want to be? And then you challenge yourself to become that. And Frank, 12 years later, I'm still trying, dude. I'm still like, this is the thing I'm always trying to teach people. Like, when you sign the dotted line to come into this life, to choose yourself, to be the hero of your own story, this is a rest of your life game. So you better buckle up because it's going to get hard. But between the difficult is beautiful. And between the sun is the rain. And there's always this back and forth, this yin and yang and ebb and flow to this experience. And as long as you can get massively clear about who it is that you want to be, despite, and this is really important, despite what you think you're capable of doing now, because your dreams, your goals, who it is that you want to become, you're already thinking too small. You've already made a declaration to yourself that you're only going to allot yourself so much. I want it all, man. I want it all. I want to live a life that is full and beautiful and strong and full of love and compassion and joy and wealth and abundance. Like, I want everything, and I'm going to have it because I believe I can. And I believe that everyone else can too. You know, we see the world and we look out on it, and especially if you're in America, you know, we damn the rich. How dare they? Dude, like 83% of all millionaires are self-employed. It's crazy. These are people who work their face off, right? The people in the happiest relationships have struggled the most, and they're willing to have transparency and authenticity and vulnerability and share their truth. The people who create greatness in their life, they sit down and they close their eyes and they meditate and they visualize and they journal and they ask for help. And the thing was, like, in this moment of suffering, that's what I knew I had to do. Now, not all of those pieces, right? Because in that moment, what it was is, can I do something different? People get so tied in to the narrative of better. I hate that word because, and this is because I'm analytical, right? And this is just a me thing. I can't put better on the table and measure it against itself. Too many variables. But I can measure different. And so I just said to myself, can I have a different life? Can I do things differently? Because you can measure different. It's very simple. Look, I'll show you how. Watch. What did I do yesterday? Smoked 2 packs, had sex with some girl from the internet, drunk and drove, didn't pay my bills on time, got a call from the collectors again, didn't call my brother when he needed my help. My friends didn't help me when I asked them to. Okay, cool. Well, that was yesterday. What can I do differently today? And then can I continue to do things differently every single day? And if you do a different thing every single day over the course of a year, that's 365 different things. And if you do 365 things differently, I can guarantee you that your fucking life will be different. But you have to be willing to sit in the truth that what is happening right now is on you. And that's what happened to me. As I sat there and I was like, this is my fault. This is on me. And the only person getting me out is me. And so I made a declaration. I figured out who I was. I took a pen and a piece of paper and I started just creating the reality of Michael, right? I know it's crass to use myself in the third person, but that's what it took. And there's a subchapter of the book called Create You. And that's what it's about, going in and building yourself, building your life, making yourself you, despite the fear, despite the people who tell you you're not enough, despite your own stupid nonsense that you ruminate in your head that you can't have, and going, you know what? Challenge it and see what happens.
How do you coach people or walk through, you know, the changing of their mindset? Because I think that's a lot of what you're speaking to here. You know, I see it in the men that I work with, right? It's like they're coming in and you know, we have a very, you know, very intense four-month program that we work them through. But oftentimes in those first couple weeks, and even sometimes into month 2, it's like they're having struggles and challenges because they're trying to think about the future, still caught up in the porn addict's mind. So if somebody has the mindset of a traumatized individual, or they're trying to think about what their future can be, they're trying to see themselves in stepping into this purpose, but their mindset is still caught up in that victimhood or just that the chaotic mindset. What are some things that they can begin to do to change their mindset? Because I know mindset is something that you speak a lot about.
Yeah, mindset is everything, man. And we live in a society, and especially in personal development, where all you hear is mindset. It's like mindset, mindset, mindset. But like nobody ever tells you really what it is. And I realized one day mindset's very simple. What you think becomes what you speak become your actions, and your actions become your reality. And so everything in your head becomes how you behave, and that behavior becomes your life. And there are people right now listening to this that you're saying things so incredibly mean to yourself that if you said them to me, I'd punch you in the face for real. And you're expecting yourself to be successful. Man, I want to teach people, if they're willing to pay attention to this, it'll change their life. I want to teach you the very thing that is the first thing I teach my clients. You're going to write down what I'm about to say, and then you're going to convince yourself that it's true. I am the kind of person who is kind to myself. I am the kind of person who is kind to myself. And people look at me and they're like, man, you're 6'4", covered in tattoos, gold all over. What do you know about kindness? I'm like, everything, bro. Everything.
Come on.
Because when you do that and you go in through this process of mindset and you think to yourself, what I think becomes what I speak. Well, am I thinking kind thoughts? What I speak become my action. Am I doing kind things? My actions become my reality. As my reality full of kindness? Then you'll realize that the very thing that separates you from where you are to where you want to go is that. Why? Because when you're challenged with actually becoming who you are, you'll ask yourself this question. What would a kind person do right now? Would they go to the porn? Would they go to the bottle? Would they pick up and leave the relationship that's toxic? Would they quit the job? Would they start the podcast? Would they go on the bike tour? Would they hit the gym? Would they eat the salad instead of the cheeseburger? Would they show up for their own damn life? What would a kind person do? You want to change your mindset? That's how you do it. But that thought process plus the action is equal to the narrative. You have to have both. You can't just think yourself into change. Dude, you can't secret yourself into anything. You can't meditate life and create abundance without an effort. You must take action. And the very things, dude, let me tell you this. You want to change your mindset, go and sit on the edge of your bed. I heard Jordan Peterson say this one time, and I was like,
I know exactly where you're going.
And I was like, this is the very thing that changed my life. Dude, look, 12 years ago, I didn't have Jordan Peterson and Gary Vee and David Goggins and Grant Cardone and Tim Story. I didn't have those guys. Dude, I had my own shit, right? That I had to figure out. And if you want to change your life, Jordan Peterson says this, I think it's absolutely beautiful. You sit on the edge of your bed in silence, and you're going to learn some shit about yourself that you don't want to know. And those things that you learn are the very things that are going to change your life forever. And as I sat on the edge of my bed, I realized the truth that when you put your head on the pillow at night, the very things that keep you awake are the very things that you must address if you want your life to be different. And so as I sat there on the edge of my bed thinking about it, not having a word, I didn't even know the word mindset 12 years ago. I have no idea what that meant. The only thing that I knew is that there's all these things that I need to address that are destroying my life, that if I don't address, I'm probably going to be dead within 2 years. Real talk.
Mm.
And so I just started addressing them. And they were all I got goosebumps, dude. They were all very, very hard. Looking at yourself with truth and authenticity is the hardest thing that you will ever do. But by doing that, what will happen is you will start to take the appropriate actions. And when you parallel that with giving yourself belief, that's how you change your life. Like this is, dude, people will come into the coaching programs, they'll read the books. We've got 400 episodes of the podcast. I've interviewed every great mind on planet Earth. Name them. They've been on my damn show. It's all the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's all the same thing. If you want your life to be different, then you have to have a different life. My therapist told me the most important thing I think that exists in the concept of mindset. We're sitting in his office. It's this rainy Portland, Oregon, Wednesday afternoon in spring. 3 years straight, I've been going to this dude's office every Wednesday, 5:15. Dude, I'm over it, Frank. I'm like, man, fuck this. I've been coming here for 3 years. Not to mention doing EMDR and cognitive behavioral therapy and men's group trauma therapy. I was doing them all, man. But this one, and I look at him and go, dude, I don't want to fucking be here anymore. I'm so tired of looking at your face. So tired of picking up other people's garbage. And he said, do you know how you change your life? And I go, well, apparently not like this, because that ain't working. He goes, change only happens when you make change happen. And I was like, that's the golden ticket. That's the truth. You've got to be willing to face the fears and the demons within you. And when you do that, do it with grace and compassion. It's not your fault that you got to where you are, but every single moment from this one is. And that's mindset, man, in a bundle.
Yeah, I love that. That Jordan Peterson quote is something I've used a lot, and it's become, you know, a foundational piece of my belief system, the way that I see the world. I mean, I've always said, you know, you want to cure your insomnia, fix the problems that are keeping you up at night.
Bro, real talk.
We're talking a lot here about the relationship we have with ourselves, though. You know, you even kind of, you know, you made the comment, like, you know, talking about Michael in the third person, you know, realizing, are you kind to yourself? There's a relationship you're having there with yourself, and that's constant and ongoing. If we're not aware of that, it can obviously be very destructive in our life. But in this, you know, in this process of healing trauma, what about the relationships we have with others? You know, how do we need to be aware about that? And how can they either lead us to healing or blunt us from the growth and healing that we ultimately are seeking?
I'm going to say something, and I think this is for you specifically, Frank. I have been a guest on a podcast 300 times, more, interviewed countless times. No one has ever asked me that question. Not once. That is such an important question. And so just huge props to you for asking such a beautiful and poignant question, because it matters.
Thank you, brother. And let me real quick, if you can hold your answer, I just want to follow up for that. First of all, I really appreciate that, brother. Like, from one podcaster to another, like, that means a ton, because I do know who you've spoken with. But I've said this from the beginning. My goal with every single episode is to get something out of you that you've never said before. So let's hear it.
Yeah, let's do it. So, you know, I think about it like this. There's twofold. We live in a society right now where this word triggered gets thrown around like fucking hotcakes, right? And everybody is always like, I'm triggered, I'm triggered, I'm triggered. I'm like, hold on, wait a second. Maybe you're just reflecting on the truth that someone else is giving you about yourself. And you need to take a step back and actually absorb it for a moment instead of running from it. Because if people are calling you out on your bullshit, there might be something there. There might be something there. You know, one of the things that I love, and this is the dichotomy of this. And so ultimately it comes down to know thyself, because there's a juxtaposition. I will tell you two things that are competing ideas. One, nobody's opinion matters except yours. Two, everybody's opinion matters, and pay attention, right? And what that effectively means is that the people and the interactions that we have with each other, they carry value, but they cannot carry so much value that they keep you stuck. And so it's about really getting concise and clear about who you are in a way where when people come to the table and they present a reality that you don't necessarily want to hear, that there may be validity there, while at the same time recognizing that some of those people are not healed, have not done work, and are instead projecting their own shit on you. I'll give you a perfect example, dude. When I was growing up, I used to watch Travel Channel with my grandma all the time and Food Network. My grandma is an old racist hillbilly from Tennessee. She ain't never been nowhere, dude. And so we would sit here and watch these shows. I'll be like, one day I'm gonna travel. And she would be like, it's dangerous in the world. You shouldn't go. You shouldn't go into the world. Bro, my grandma lived in Indiana and Tennessee. She never went anywhere. I don't think my grandma ever was on a plane one time. And she's going to tell me the world is dangerous. Dude, at 29, I packed up everything I own. I sold the rest and I went and traveled the world. I lived in 12 different countries. I sat there and wrote Think Unbroken on the beaches of Thailand, practicing Muay Thai, riding motorcycles in Europe, in Asia, in Mexico, in South America. Dude, it's safer there than it is in America. Bro, I was in Vietnam, Frank. I was in Vietnam, and the police there in a communist country walk around with Mac 11s and AK 47s. I have never felt more safe in my life. Right. And so think about this. If I would have listened to her, this is about understanding this dichotomy. If I would have listened to her, I never would have discovered so many beautiful things about the world. Have some of the friends that I have, written this first book, felt the inspiration to actually try things that scared the shit out of me. But at the same time, it's about recognizing that people will always try to keep you quote unquote safe or have your quote unquote best interest in mind. And you, on the other side of it, now to go deeper and answer your question fully, you have to also recognize the impact that you are having on other people. If you're sitting out here and you're like, oh, the things that I do, they don't matter, you're screwed. And let me tell you this, the most dangerous sentence in a human language, I don't care what language it is, the most dangerous sentence you will ever utter is that's just how I am. The amount of fixed mindset and that's just how I am is exactly what led me to where I was at 26. Because every single time I did something that hurt other people, that's just how I am. That's your problem, Frank. You don't like it? Fuck you. That's on you. It has nothing to do with me. Whoa. You might want to pause and think about life a little bit deeper. Because if you're looking at life through this scope that your actions don't matter, you are in deep shit. Because guess what they do? Two reasons. One, you know that people are watching. Your friends, your community, your coworkers, your employees, your neighbors, your girlfriend, your husband, they're watching. Two, arguably, maybe even more important, other people are watching too.
Speak to the men here specifically, if you can. So we have, it's about a 90% male audience. You mentioned, the therapy, the EMDR, but then you did say men's group, men's work. And I know, yep. You've talked about some virtual mentors here. I think you and I have a lot of the same people that we probably have read, listened to, followed, studied, so forth and so forth. But I also know you've had some, very important, men's mentorship in your life. So speak to the importance of, male mentorship for men, whether it's, healing through trauma or, just succeeding in life in general. So why we need men and maybe what have been some of the lessons that you've, taken away from the men in your life?
Yeah, dude, that's an amazing question. Growing up, let me create context quickly. The relationship that I had with men as a child was all bathed in fear. My stepfather was a monster, dude. 6'4", 6'3", I don't know how tall he was, 230, 240. Imagine beating up a 6-year-old. Imagine that, dude. Just giant human coward beating the shit. But hold on, hurt people, man. Yeah. His grandmother, his mother was a monster. Imagine her mother, so on. This is why my mission is to end generational trauma, to be the one to change this. right? It's easy to always, and I get it, dude, because I say the same thing. It's easy to throw somebody under the bus, be like, that fucking loser piece of shit. And then you take a step back and you go, wait a second,
Yeah.
what did they suffer through? And so having that relationship with him was terror. Dude, when his car door would shut, my central nervous system would go immediately into fight or flight, and I would be in my sympathetic nervous system all day, all night. I had insomnia at 7 years old because he would wake us up in the middle of the night and beat the shit out of us when he was drunk. One time we put away wet dishes, and he beat me so badly I couldn't sit down for like 2 days. Right? Think about this. My father, never met him. What's my relationship with men? Right? Growing up, it was like, for the love of God, can a guy show me some love, some compassion? And then what happened was that in elementary school, man, I would do anything to be like those other boys. Right? But some of these kids are wearing Jordans and I'm wearing shoes from the Goodwill. By middle school, I'm a chubby kid because all of our food came from a church pantry. I didn't have a salad till the first time till I was 20 years old. And so what happened was all the boys were picking on me for being the fat kid. Well, man, shit, now I got this too. All my relationships were volatile. And then by the time it was high school, I ballooned up to, 6'4". I'm captain of the football team, captain of the wrestling team. I'm playing 4 sports. I kind of filled out into this size, right? And then it was like, man, can I make my coaches love me? Can I get admiration? Dude, when I would lose, so I won more wrestling tournaments than I can count. But the ones that I lost hurt so much because I was like, I let them down. And then what happened was I realized in this journey one day laying on the yoga mat, right? Doing yoga in Indiana a decade ago, right? Ain't nobody doing that, man. I was like, fuck.
A mixed skin that's 6'4", right?
Yeah, being like in good old Indiana doing yoga with all these super fit people and me walking in there morbidly obese, right? But I had this realization. I'm laying on the mat one day and tears start filling my eyes at the end of this practice. And I was like, oh, I have nothing but fear of intimacy with men. And let's be clear what intimacy means. We're not talking about sex. It's nonsense. People always go there. I always have to context it because that's where people go. Intimacy is about, dude, when's the last time you hugged your best friend? When's the last time you didn't talk about the game? Nobody cares, right? When's the last time it wasn't, let's go get drunk, right? When was it, let's bond, let's create, let's grow, let's transform? And I realized 27 years old, never had that. Not once. My best friend and I at the time, we were no longer best friends. We lived together for 7 years. We hugged 3 times, right? Our idea of a good time, we go get shit-faced together, watch sports, all of it, the collective of guys. And so coming into it, again, causation and correlation is everything in life. That's why I'm telling the story with this context, because I recognize that in order for me to actually heal, I also had to heal my relationship with men. And what that meant for me was putting myself in arguably the most uncomfortable situation humanly possible, because men are already scared of their feelings and emotions, right? Because that's what we've been taught and told. It was beyond therapy. It was like men's group therapy. And so I think we did those on Tuesday nights. Every Tuesday night for 2 years, I walked into this room with these guys. We shared real shit. And in that, what happened was 2 things. One, I learned the truth of what vulnerability really is. Vulnerability isn't this nonsense you see on Instagram with people crying on the internet. That's stupid. That's not vulnerability.
It's attention seeking.
It's attention seeking, 100%. It's vulnerability is sitting across from another man and saying, I love you, and I'm sorry that you had to suffer, but I got your back. Do you have mine? And trusting that. And when you go through that process, what happens is you start to realize and understand the truth. These men that we look up to, a lot of them who are incredibly, I don't want to use the word toxic because I hate that word, but incredibly unhealed, uneducated, like I want to say self, like they don't know themselves. Those men who posture, right? Like right now, I'm going to throw him under the bus. I don't care if he hears this or not. Andrew Tate, seeing this guy on the internet right now is poison. If you're putting that kind of person in your ears, you need to check yourself, because being a man isn't about the amount of money you make. It isn't about the number of women that you sleep with. Masculinity sure as hell ain't about the car. Frank, dude, I've never put on a pair of shoes and be like, I love myself. Being a man is sitting down with your journal and saying, this is what I hold myself to. These are my values. These are my wants, my needs, my interests, my boundaries. And the way that I find them in a deeper capacity is to sit across from another man and have a conversation about truth, honesty, love, and intention. And if you're willing to step into that, which I know obviously the men who listen to this, they are, but there's another level and you haven't gone deep enough yet because you are scared. And you need to face that fear, because when you do, oh my God, dude, it's incredible what happens when you start to build brotherhood, when you start to build connection, and what it means to be a man for you, not for me. Because look, dude, I ain't going fishing with you. Ain't happening. That to me ain't being a man, right? But it's subjective and you have to create it for yourself. To me, being a man is owning your word, knowing your values. My values are honesty, leadership, kindness, self-actualization, and no excuses. And can I parallel that in conversation with other men who feel or think the same, who want to create change in the world, but most importantly, who want to be able to go and look in that damn mirror and be okay with the reflection on the other side?
Dude, I love that so much, man. I was with one of my best friends this morning. I hugged him 3 times, more than 3 times in a 90-minute session we spent together. Just love where you went with that response, and the need for intimacy with men in our lives. And I was interviewed last week on a podcast by a woman. Podcast is called Intimate Conversations. She gets into sex talks,
Oh yeah,
relationship
I've
talks.
been on that show too.
Okay, yeah, amazing woman, like just incredible spirit. And obviously with the work that we were talking about, porn and porn addiction, the impact on men, the impact on men's relationships, and just like you, I'm an open book. Like you can ask me anything. So we got into my story. I had been in a relationship when all this started, and kind of finding God and coming to my faith has been very instrumental to me, and now realizing I was doing a lot of things not aligned with the what I was seeking, and she asked me kind of personally, like, will you be open to discussing how getting porn out of your life has improved your intimate and where she was going, your sexual relationships, and that's where she was asking the question about. But I had to tell her, I was like, I wish I had some better example. I could tell you from the men, but I made a choice 3 years ago that I was going to remain abstinent until I find my wife. But I responded with her or to her that I feel intimate with almost everybody. I mean, you and I have had a very deep, intimate conversation over the last 60 minutes. The men that I get to work with, like, whether it's in a one-on-one coaching session, and what's really powerful is in the group sessions when, the men are now, speaking into each other and, expression of love. And it takes me a couple weeks to get there. So we have 16 weeks. By week 4, week 5, I start ending the call with, I love you guys. And it's interesting to watch because you can see the guys that are fully surrendering to the work and to the program respond back with that same greeting or that same response. The ones that are having some struggle with the self-awareness, and I actually so I do some business coaching as well, and I tested this because a young man I was working with on the business side, we were at an event in Nashville back in April, and I saw a lot of similarities in him with a lot of the men that I work with. He was in his mid to late 20s. I could tell that he was struggling with his identity and just where his place was going to fall in this world. But I was coaching him in business, but I saw an opportunity at the end of the events. And I did that same exact, like as we were leaving the event, I was like, I love you, brother. And I could sense the uneasiness in him. And all I knew is like he's got some healing that he needs to go through. So I love that response. And I would secondly, anybody out there that is listening to Andrew's stuff, man, I'm not here to, call people out, but I think there's better models. I think there's some nuggets in what he shares, but I don't think most people are self-aware enough to pull out the good, and get rid of the bad. So I would definitely advise most of the men out there to steer clear of that. And I think this audience probably probably does. Michael, dude, this has been incredible, man. I feel like you and I could just riff all night long, man. Get to our final question here, but before we do that, if people want to learn more about you, if they maybe want to get into some of your work, I know you have some free resources. I obviously plug the book as well. So yeah, where can people find you, connect with you, and where are you hanging out, socially and online the most
Hey
right
man,
now?
everywhere, and this has been absolutely phenomenal conversation. I'm everywhere on social at Michael Unbroken. But if you go to thinkunbrokenacademy.com, thinkunbrokenacademy.com, we have a free community there, full of tons of resources, amazing, hundreds and hundreds of people who are on this healing journey. Of course, there's programs and paid stuff in there, but just to be a part of the
Start with
community,
the free.
all it costs is your effort.
Incredible. Guys, yeah, we'll get all that plugged down in the show notes. We'll get the academy, we'll get Michael's website, we'll get the podcast, we'll get a link to the book. I definitely recommend, guys, if you have some issues that you need to process, the book is like most of the ones that we share with you guys here. It's actionable, it's punctionable, it's not fluffy buffy, just like this conversation wasn't. So definitely check it out. But as we bring today's conversation to a close, so this is the final question in every single episode here with Michael. Obviously, the title of the show is The Superhuman Life. And it's been a series and journey, and I know I'm going to be on your podcast here, in the next couple of weeks. We'll get to that. But how would Michael Anthony define living a superhuman life?
Dude, it's very simple. No excuses, just results.
Love it. Love it. Guys, you heard it out there. All of this starts with you, exploring your own self. We started at the beginning with the volcano. We all have an eruption waiting to burst, and if we're not in front of it, it can be destructive in our lives. So hope you guys found value in this. If you did and you're new here, thank you for joining us. We've seen tremendous growth in the downloads, the listeners, subscriptions, and it's all due to you guys out there. So if you want to continue to support us, you can do this in one or two ways. First off, leave us a 5-star rating, whether it's on Apple, Spotify, whatever platform you guys are listening to. But more importantly, guys, especially with today's conversation, if there's somebody in your life that is going through, some of these issues, there's somebody that has the need for some healing, or they have some trauma that they need to process and get through, do us a favor, but more importantly, do them the blessing by sharing today's conversation with them. But for Michael Anthony from the Think Unbroken podcast and Think Unbroken movement, Frank Rich, your host, we love you guys, and we'll see you in the next one.